Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have gone on yet another faux royal tour, as Sarah Ferguson may be arrested next.
And she hasn't been in touch with him at all. So we're going to expose every cringeworthy...
For lots of pictures. They were invited there by China's favorite health organization, the World Health Organization.
February 28, 2026, Harry and Meghan touched down in Jordan, thinking this trip was about to flip the whole story around for them. The plan looked big on paper: a humanitarian visit, a partnership with the WHO, cameras everywhere capturing every step. It was supposed to look like a major comeback moment, the kind that gets the headlines buzzing and the spotlight back on them. But behind the scenes, they made one move that was supposed to seal the deal. Their team sent a formal letter to the Jordanian royal family asking for a private meeting with the king and queen. A quiet audience, royal to royal, the kind of moment that would signal serious respect and recognition. And the response? Nothing. No polite "we regret to inform you," no scheduling conflict. Not even a short acknowledgement. Just silence. Total silence. Like the request never even existed. That awkward quiet was only the beginning. What unfolded over the next 48 hours sent shockwaves through royal watchers everywhere. People close to the palace started talking, insiders began whispering, and by the end of this story, you'll see exactly why Princess Anne finally decided she wasn't staying quiet anymore. If you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We cover stories like this the moment they break. And don't forget to like the video too. It really helps more people find the channel. Now let's get straight into what happened next.
Meghan Markle and Prince Harry will visit Jordan for a humanitarian trip in partnership with the World Health Organization.
Here's the part most people don't realize. This trip wasn't some random last-minute idea. It wasn't Harry and Meghan waking up one morning thinking, let's go do something good today. No chance. This whole move was mapped out way in advance, carefully planned and calculated all the way back in mid-2025. And once you see what was really driving it, the entire situation starts to look very different. By the middle of 2025, the Sussex brand was hitting a rough patch. The public support they once enjoyed was slowly fading, and the big momentum they used to have wasn't showing up the same way anymore. Deals weren't landing like before, the buzz around them was cooling off, and the overall narrative was starting to slip. That's when the strategy kicked in. They needed something major to shift the conversation again. Something that looked meaningful, something serious, something that would put them back in the spotlight for the right reasons. So they built a plan around exactly that idea. On the surface, it looked simple: partner with the World Health Organization and frame the entire trip as a humanitarian mission.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have gone to Jordan, of all places. It's a little bit of a peculiar...
And use that as the backbone for everything they were about to do. A partnership with the World Health Organization sounds serious right away. It carries weight. It feels official. More importantly, it gives cameras something meaningful to focus on instead of two famous figures trying to stay in the spotlight. And that was the strategy from the start. Wrap the entire trip in that humanitarian shine, make it look like a global mission, and let the attention from it open doors for major media opportunities afterward. Because underneath all the speeches and photo moments, the bigger goal was clear: build buzz, create headlines, and use that momentum to secure high-value media deals once the trip grabbed international attention. But here's where things get really interesting. They didn't just show up and hope things worked out. This was far more deliberate than that. Their team prepared a formal letter, printed on heavy cream stationery, still marked with the Sussex coronet as if it carried the same royal authority it once did. And this letter wasn't sent through a publicist or some casual email. It went straight to the Jordanian royal court. A direct request, a formal exchange, and most importantly, a private audience with King Abdullah and Queen Rania themselves. Just think about that for a moment. Someone sat down, drafted that message carefully, printed it on official-looking stationery, and sent it off expecting the palace to take it seriously.
Prince Harry and Meghan have met with children in refugee camps and hospitals in Jordan. They're on a 2-day visit to the...
They sent it to one of the most respected royal courts in the world and genuinely expected a reply. In their minds, King Abdullah, a leader known for his long-standing personal friendship with William and Catherine, would open that letter and immediately say yes. The expectation seemed clear: that he would welcome them the same way he would visiting dignitaries, working royals, or official representatives of the monarchy. It was almost as if the last few years, the stepping back from royal duties and the distance from the palace, had never happened at all. And that moment says a lot about the thinking behind the whole move. Because this wasn't just ambition talking. It showed a serious disconnect from how things actually work in royal circles. The assumption inside that letter was simple: that the Sussex name still carried enough influence to walk straight into a foreign royal court and be received at the very top level. But here's the reality check. There was no official backing behind it, no mandate, no call from Buckingham Palace clearing the way for them or supporting the request.
Andrew's had one of the biggest falls from grace of anyone you can ever remember. I mean,
Just the coronet on the stationery and the belief that it would somehow be enough. It wasn't just a bold move, it was the kind of decision that only makes sense if you truly believe you're still operating at a level the rest of the world no longer sees the same way. The entire mission had been built around one big assumption, that they could operate independently on the global stage, and that the Sussex name alone would still open powerful doors. Jordan was meant to prove that point. This trip was supposed to be the moment that showed everyone they didn't need anyone's approval. The idea was simple: step onto the international stage, take part in meaningful humanitarian work, create powerful images for the cameras, and return home with their influence looking stronger than ever. That was the strategy. By mid-2025, Harry and Meghan were fully invested in that plan. When that envelope was sealed and sent off to Amman, they were expecting a response that would set the entire visit in motion. But what came back, or more accurately, what didn't come back, ended up changing the whole situation completely.
Computer hierarchy. However, they refused. After multiple attempts, dressings are being done on the...
So the letter went out. The stationery looked pristine, the coronet stamped proudly at the top, and Harry and Meghan waited for the response. But here's the twist nobody expected. There wasn't a polite decline. There wasn't even a formal rejection. Instead, they received something far more uncomfortable than that. Absolutely nothing. Complete silence. The kind of silence that leaves zero room for confusion. No acknowledgement, no reply, no signal that the request was even being considered. King Abdullah and Queen Rania, two of the most respected monarchs on the global stage, didn't respond at all. And this wasn't some random oversight. It wasn't a scheduling problem or a message getting lost somewhere along the way. King Abdullah and Queen Rania have a well-known, long-standing friendship with William and Catherine that goes back many years. These are leaders who don't just overlook official correspondence by accident, which makes the silence feel very intentional. It set the tone for everything that followed, because despite that silence, Harry and Meghan still went ahead with the trip. They landed in Jordan anyway, cameras ready and their production crew already in place to capture every moment.
Thank you for that, and thank you so much.
The entire operation kept moving forward like the snub had never happened. When they arrived in Jordan, they didn't slow things down either. Instead, the requests started getting bigger. Their team reportedly asked for a motorcade and military-level security, the type normally arranged for working royals during official state visits. But Jordan's Ministry of Interior looked at that request and gave a very clear answer: no. From their perspective, this wasn't a state visit at all. There was no official mandate behind it. No diplomatic communication from the British monarch confirming any formal role or authority for the trip. Without that backing, the situation looked very different. So as far as Jordanian officials were concerned, Harry and Meghan were visiting as private individuals on a working trip, and that meant they would receive the same level of arrangements any private visitors would receive. Now imagine that moment for a second. You've spent months planning this journey. Teams involved, schedules organized, cameras ready, everything built around the idea that your name still carries serious influence. Then suddenly you're standing there in Amman, hearing that the level of treatment you expected simply isn't being granted. The gap between what they believed this visit would look like and what it actually turned into couldn't have been wider, and the situation was only about to get more complicated.
And the Jordanian royals. Technically, it was the WHO.
And things became even more awkward from there. While Meghan was out filming humanitarian-style content around the city, something else caught people's attention. Queen Rania was photographed attending a local education initiative just a few miles away. She was out in public, meeting people, clearly active that day, yet completely unavailable during the entire Sussex visit. That timing raised a lot of eyebrows. Because when a queen is visibly attending other engagements while guests are in the same city, many royal watchers see it as a quiet but unmistakable signal. People in those circles understand the message right away. Then there was the situation involving the British ambassador, Peter Hall. The Sussex team reportedly pushed hard on that front too. Their side requested a reception at the British ambassador's residence, hoping to create a more official-looking moment during the trip. After some effort, a small gathering was eventually arranged. But the way it came together didn't go unnoticed. Observers pointed out the pressure behind the request and questioned whether it blurred the lines of a private visit. Some critics described it very directly, saying it looked like someone was using a title to open doors that normally wouldn't open for a non-official trip.
Their community. This is the community Gazans cooking for Gazans.
And then came the comment that really got people talking. At one point, a Jordanian official reportedly muttered a line that quickly spread through diplomatic circles. The remark was simple but sharp. "The Queen of Jordan doesn't do commercials for Netflix." That sentence traveled fast and eventually made its way back to London. Why did it hit so hard? Because it cut straight through the humanitarian narrative and said the quiet part out loud. Inside those official buildings, people seemed to understand what the Sussex visit was really aiming to achieve. And from the look of it, many had no interest in getting pulled into that storyline. One by one, the expected moments simply never happened. The motorcade they requested didn't arrive, the royal-style welcome never appeared, and the private audience they had asked for in that carefully written letter on cream stationery never came through. Instead, the Jordanian royal family communicated their position through something much louder than words: deliberate silence and distance. The message many observers took from it was clear. Without formal backing from the British Crown, the Sussex name alone wasn't enough to secure a place at that level of royal engagement. Meanwhile, while all of this tension was unfolding quietly behind palace doors, the cameras were still rolling. And the footage they were capturing, that's where the situation started to look even more uncomfortable.
Catching them. And this footage is always just so frustrating to watch because it seems like they're important people with a horde of people.
Because Princess Anne's office didn't just question the trip itself, their attention reportedly turned to the imagery coming out of it, especially what happened inside a specialty hospital in Amman. One particular moment stood out immediately. Meghan was photographed holding the hand of a 14-year-old refugee from Gaza who was recovering from serious burn injuries. On the surface, the image looked deeply compassionate, a duchess sitting beside a young patient, offering comfort during a painful recovery. And honestly, it was exactly the type of photo the entire visit seemed designed to produce. But here's where things became sensitive. When people inside royal circles saw that photograph, some immediately felt a sense of déjà vu. Not the exact same picture, of course, but something strikingly similar that many recognized right away. The resemblance wasn't subtle to them. It felt very deliberate. Because decades earlier, in 1992, Princess Diana had been photographed during a visit to a children's hostel in Islamabad, a moment that became one of the most widely remembered humanitarian images of her time.
Because as the Epstein tsunami takes out the British royal family,
The footage from that 1992 visit became legendary. The way Diana sat beside those children, the calm way she spoke with them, the gentle connection she created, those moments turned into some of the most powerful images tied to her legacy. For many people, that visit helped define how the world saw Diana: compassionate, approachable, and deeply human in the way she interacted with vulnerable communities. So when Anne's team reportedly placed the two images side by side, the similarities immediately stood out. And they weren't small details either. They were surprisingly precise. The camera angle looked nearly identical, a low-medium shot designed to focus attention on the physical connection between Meghan and the young patient. Even the wardrobe raised eyebrows. A crisp white blazer paired with understated gold jewelry created a look that observers said closely mirrored the style seen in Diana's famous visit. And the framing added even more to the comparison. There was no translator visible in the shot, which emphasized a quiet, universal connection, the same emotional style Diana's humanitarian visits were known for. According to reports, palace insiders didn't describe the resemblance as a coincidence. Some viewed it as something much more deliberate, a carefully staged echo of one of Diana's most recognizable humanitarian moments.
Meghan Markle and Prince Harry make surprise trip to Jordan, visit young Gaza burn victim in Amman.
Some critics even suggested the moment looked crafted for modern streaming content in 2026. And the words reportedly coming from Anne's side were especially sharp. One line in particular stood out and quickly circulated through royal circles. She said, "The late Princess of Wales gave her heart to the suffering. She didn't use them as props for a commercial reel." That statement landed heavily. Because once that perspective is introduced, the entire hospital visit starts to look different. What was presented publicly as a compassionate interaction suddenly gets reframed as something more calculated, something closer to production than pure spontaneity. When people began looking again at the image, every detail started to draw scrutiny. The camera angle, the carefully chosen outfit, the absence of an interpreter in the frame. Instead of feeling like natural moments, critics began describing them as elements that looked more like a planned shot list. And this is where the story becomes even more layered. Princess Diana isn't just a respected historical figure, she is also the person Meghan has often mentioned as a major inspiration. From the very beginning, comparisons between the two women have circulated widely. Sometimes those comparisons came from commentators, and other times Meghan herself appeared comfortable acknowledging the parallel.
Let me tell you about the work not the headlines, not the framing, not the media.
So the criticism wasn't just about one photo or one hospital visit. The bigger accusation was that the imagery looked too familiar, too specific, and repeated often enough that some people inside royal circles felt it needed to be addressed openly. From that perspective, the concern wasn't simply that Diana's style had been echoed once. It was that similar visual moments had appeared again and again, creating the impression of a carefully repeated pattern, and the timing of Anne speaking up made the situation even more interesting. This wasn't described as a quick reaction to a single image circulating online. According to observers, it looked more like something that had been quietly noticed and discussed over a longer period of time. The hospital visit in Amman wasn't seen as the beginning. It was the moment when the conversation finally became public. The message many people interpreted from that response was straightforward. You can borrow the aesthetic, you can recreate the composition, you can wear the white blazer, hold a hand for the camera, and frame the shot just right. But eventually, the camera tells its own story. And as Anne's reported comments suggested, people around the world were starting to look more closely at the difference between someone simply appearing compassionate for a moment and someone truly being present in it.
The Meghan and Harry haters are especially quiet today. I would have expected more outrage from the same people who had a full-blown meltdown when Meghan baked cookies.
The hospital visit wasn't the only moment that had people talking. At the Za'atari refugee camp, another scene was being filmed. Meghan appeared on video taking a penalty kick during a casual football match with Syrian refugee children. The footage showed her laughing, relaxed, and interacting with the kids, the kind of moment meant to feel natural and heartwarming. On its own, it looked like a friendly, spontaneous interaction. But the situation didn't stay that simple for long. Within hours of the clip circulating online, viewers began placing it side by side with something else people remembered. Footage from Catherine's 2022 royal tour suddenly entered the conversation, specifically a moment where Catherine was also seen taking a penalty kick with children during a community visit. And the comparison spread quickly across social media. Both clips showed a similar setup, a dusty field, a playful penalty shot, and laughter with children afterward. Online observers started pointing out the similarities in the scene, the body posture during the kick, and even the way the reactions were captured on camera. Internet sleuths noticed it first, then commentators began discussing it more widely. For critics watching closely, the resemblance between the two clips felt striking enough that it quickly became another talking point surrounding the trip.
Authority to go away, and how badly they've behaved has shocked everyone.
That's not just a vague similarity people are pointing out. Critics say it looks more like a blueprint being followed, and the location makes the situation even more significant. Jordan isn't just any random stop on a travel schedule. For royal watchers, the country has a special connection to Catherine that goes far beyond official visits. She actually lived in Amman as a child from 1984 to 1986, spending part of her early years there. Because of that, Jordan holds a deeply personal meaning for her, something much stronger than a typical diplomatic relationship. When Prince William visited the country in 2018, the trip carried that emotional weight too. It wasn't just another royal tour stop. The visit highlighted the long-standing friendship between the House of Windsor and the Hashemite royal family, a bond shaped over many years. That history is why some observers raised eyebrows when the Sussex team selected Jordan for this visit. From that point of view, it didn't look like they had simply chosen a country with an important humanitarian story to highlight. To critics watching closely, the choice of location felt far more deliberate than that.
Former prince's despicable behavior because he thought he was untouchable. He had children trafficked to him, and his ex...
Critics say the situation looked like they were stepping directly into Catherine's world and then recreating some of her most recognizable moments inside it. From the way Anne's office reportedly presented it, this wasn't treated as a coincidence. Instead, it was described as part of a pattern. The concern raised was that similar imagery kept appearing in a country that carries deep personal meaning for Catherine, making the overlap difficult for people to ignore. And according to reports circulating from palace insiders, Prince William was extremely unhappy about the situation. From his perspective, the context matters a lot. Jordan isn't just another location tied to royal visits. It's connected to Catherine's childhood, a place where she lived for several years, and where the royal family has long-standing relationships. When William visited in the past, that history played a big role in how the trip was received. So critics argued that seeing similar scenes recreated there, the same kinds of interactions, the same types of imagery, made the situation feel much more personal, and the palace reaction reflected that. Footage from the Za'atari camp, including the penalty kick and the playful moments with children, reportedly appeared in media outlets very quickly after being filmed. Observers noticed the speed of those releases and began discussing the timing. Some commentators even pointed out that the clips surfaced right around the same period as Catherine's own charity-related digital campaigns, which added another layer to the conversation surrounding the trip.
What due diligence was done before lending this royal prestige to an organization with that online history?
Critics argued this wasn't simply content being released online. They believed it was content being placed very strategically. From that viewpoint, the footage seemed aimed directly at the space Catherine occupies, especially in a country that plays such a meaningful role in her personal story. For many royal watchers, Jordan is closely tied to Catherine's past, so anything unfolding there naturally draws extra attention. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. The clips did go viral, just not in the way the Sussex team likely hoped. Instead of building a new narrative around Meghan as an independent humanitarian voice, the side-by-side comparisons quickly took over the conversation. Online viewers began reposting the two sets of footage next to each other, pointing out similarities and debating what they meant. Rather than creating a fresh storyline, the comparisons simply made the resemblance more visible. And once Anne's office reportedly stepped in and addressed the issue publicly, the focus shifted again. At that point, the discussion was no longer just about one video clip or one photograph. For critics, it became part of a much larger conversation, one about whether repeated visual similarities had finally pushed the situation too far for the palace to stay silent any longer.
Like it's sort of seeing it as a burden, you know, as opposed to understanding that this gave you a rarefied.
Now, this is the moment that really set people talking. Up until this point, the controversy had already been building. The royal silence, the comparisons to Diana's famous images, the side-by-side soccer footage, all of that created plenty of debate around the trip. But the next development hit on a completely different level. This wasn't about protocol anymore. It wasn't about photo angles, wardrobe choices, or royal optics. This one touched something much more personal: family connections. During the Jordan visit, Harry appeared at a specialty orthopedic clinic in Amman. Cameras captured him examining a high-tech prosthetic leg while sitting in on discussions about rehabilitation programs for veterans and refugees who had lost limbs. The imagery was powerful. Here was a prince leaning forward, holding this advanced piece of technology, listening closely as doctors and specialists explained how it could help people regain mobility after devastating injuries. The visual told a strong story about recovery, resilience, and medical innovation. For viewers watching the footage, it became one of the most striking scenes from the entire trip, a moment that immediately stood out among all the other images circulating online.
Anna, in the past, Meghan was ambitious and couldn't give up the expensive jewelry and luxurious clothes. But during this visit to a refugee camp in Jordan,
and that image quickly became one of the most widely shared moments from the trip. The footage spread across Sussex media channels and online platforms, presented as a centerpiece of the visit's humanitarian message. It showed Harry closely examining the prosthetic technology while discussing recovery and mobility support, a moment meant to highlight compassion and global outreach. But at the very same time that clip was circulating around the world, another situation connected to the family was drawing attention. Reports surfaced that Meghan's father, Thomas Markle, who is in his 80s, had recently undergone a serious medical procedure involving the amputation of his leg while staying in a medical facility in the Philippines. The timing placed the surgery within a similar period as the Jordan trip. According to public reports about the situation, he was going through recovery in difficult circumstances, relying mainly on his own limited financial resources and medical care available locally. Because of that timing, commentators online began pointing out the contrast. On one side, Harry was being filmed holding a prosthetic leg while discussing rehabilitation for people facing limb loss. On the other side, Meghan's father was reportedly recovering from a similar life-changing medical event during the same period. That contrast quickly became another intense talking point surrounding the trip.
According to Honest reporting, Prince Harry and Meghan met refugees and aid workers to spotlight relief efforts, but
was reportedly recovering in a standard medical facility on the other side of the world, largely on his own. For many observers, the contrast between those two situations seemed so direct that it hardly needed explanation. But commentary still came, and when Anne's office addressed the topic, the words reportedly carried a sharp edge. According to the statement being discussed in royal circles, it questioned the image being presented. The line suggested that someone who publicly champions mobility and recovery for strangers while appearing disconnected from a similar situation affecting a close family member risks looking less like a genuine humanitarian and more like someone performing that role for the cameras. That framing changed the way many people began looking at the entire Jordan trip. Suddenly, the discussion wasn't just about photographs or symbolism anymore. The conversation shifted toward the difference between truly supporting people and appearing to support them in public moments. At the same time, financial commentators started examining the scale of the visit itself. Estimates circulating online suggested that organizing the 2-day Jordan trip, including private travel, security, and a full production crew handling filming, styling, and media coverage, could have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that contrast became another point critics brought into the debate surrounding the visit.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have arrived in Jordan for a high-profile visit to meet with Gazan refugees.
Placing those two realities side by side created a contrast that many people online couldn't ignore. On one side, there was a highly produced international trip with cameras, security teams, and a full media rollout. On the other side, there were reports about Meghan's father recovering from major surgery under far more modest circumstances. For many observers, that comparison quickly became a powerful talking point. The reaction across social media was immediate and intense. Discussions about the Jordan trip and Thomas Markle's situation spread rapidly, generating millions of mentions within hours. One phrase began trending widely: "Compassion begins at home." That hashtag climbed to the top of trending lists in several countries, including the UK, Canada, and Australia. Moments like that don't gain traction unless people feel strongly about what they're seeing. For many viewers, the contrast struck a nerve and sparked emotional reactions across the internet. What added another layer to the debate was the messaging the Sussexes had promoted for years, a message centered around compassion, empathy, and advocacy for people facing hardship.
On a global scale, I see you. Our next stop is the youth center at the refugee.
For years, the public narrative surrounding the Sussex brand has leaned heavily on themes like family, empathy, and standing beside people during difficult moments. Those ideas have been a central part of how their public work and messaging are presented. So when reports about Thomas Markle's medical situation appeared alongside images of Harry discussing prosthetic technology abroad, many commentators said the contrast raised uncomfortable questions. From their perspective, the issue wasn't just about disagreement or criticism. They argued it challenged the very framework the Sussex narrative had been built around, the idea of compassion and support for people facing hardship. Critics pointed out that when someone positions themselves as a strong voice for empathy on the global stage, the public often expects that same concern to extend to personal relationships as well. But here's the detail that many people missed during all the diplomatic drama. While headlines focused on what wasn't happening, the unanswered letter, the missing motorcade, and the Jordanian royal family appearing elsewhere, something else was quietly unfolding in the very footage the Sussex team themselves were releasing.
Shout out to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, for doing the work on their dime and not the...
Something else people began noticing was Harry's behavior during the trip. Across those 2 days, several body language specialists, some of whom were consulted by major UK newspapers, started analyzing the available footage. Their breakdowns focused on small details that many viewers might normally overlook, but once those details were pointed out, they became difficult to ignore. The first observation was surprisingly simple. In all the clips released from the Jordan visit, analysts said there appeared to be very little spontaneous interaction between Harry and Meghan. No quick exchanged glances, no casual moments of laughter between them, and none of the relaxed gestures people often associate with couples presenting a united front in public. To some commentators, that absence stood out. Because if you compare it to appearances the couple made together between 2022 and 2024, the contrast can look noticeable. During earlier events, observers frequently pointed out their physical closeness, regular eye contact, and small supportive gestures. But in the Jordan footage, those moments seemed far less visible. Then, analysts pointed to another detail: positioning. Throughout much of the trip's footage, Harry often appeared standing slightly behind Meghan during public moments and camera shots.
Prince Harry and Meghan left personalised notes at a rehabilitation centre in Jordan after meeting.
Not standing beside her, positioned directly behind her, and often just outside the strongest lighting used for the main camera shots. For people familiar with how media productions work, lighting placement is rarely accidental. Where the lights fall is usually a deliberate decision made by the production team. And in the Jordan footage, some analysts pointed out that the lighting consistently centered Meghan as the primary focus, while Harry appeared more in the background. That observation led commentators to suggest the visual framing made it look like Meghan was leading the moment while Harry played a quieter supporting role in the scene. During the online discussion that followed, a phrase even started trending: content hostage. It's a harsh way to describe the situation, but it captured the feeling some viewers said they were getting from the footage. The idea behind that phrase was that Harry sometimes appeared less like an active driver of the mission and more like someone fulfilling an expected role within a larger production. Body language analysts reviewing the clips used strong descriptions when discussing his demeanor. Words like drained, tired, and mechanically compliant appeared in several commentaries as they tried to interpret the expressions and posture visible in the released footage.
You can see, look,
look at this. And this isn't simple,
Observers pointed out that those aren't the kinds of descriptions usually associated with someone who appears fully energized by what they're doing. One moment in particular stood out to analysts reviewing the footage. During Meghan's remarks at a WHO roundtable discussion, Harry was filmed looking away from the main conversation several times. It wasn't just a brief glance or a moment of distraction. Commentators noted that he appeared disengaged more than once during the segment. For a figure whose public image in recent years has centered on standing beside his wife and presenting a strong, unified message, that detail caught people's attention. Some analysts argued that moments like that didn't look like someone simply having an off day. To them, it hinted at something deeper showing through in the body language. Reports suggested that Anne's office also took notice of these details. Their interpretation, according to commentary circulating in royal coverage, framed the situation in a very striking way. The line being discussed described Harry as no longer walking beside Meghan, but walking alone in the shadow of a crown he insulted yet cannot escape. It's a powerful phrase, one that implies the royal institution Harry stepped away from still shapes how much of the world sees him today.
Harry and Meghan. King Abdullah, Queen Rania. Queen Rania is especially close to Queen Camilla, have no plans.
And without that royal framework around him, some commentators argue that Harry still seems to be searching for exactly where he fits and what role he wants to play going forward. Watching the Jordan footage back, that's the detail many viewers say feels the most uncomfortable. Beneath the polished production, the carefully chosen camera angles, the humanitarian messaging, and the staged moments, some observers believe they see something else entirely. A person who appears uncertain. Not someone dramatically playing to the cameras or exaggerating emotions, but a man who at times looks like he's simply moving through the schedule placed in front of him. To critics, the imagery created a striking contrast. A major international trip unfolding in a country where the official royal reception never materialized, a mission struggling to gain the impact it hoped for, and Harry often standing slightly outside the main spotlight while the cameras focused elsewhere. And then one final detail sparked even more discussion. When the visit concluded, reports circulated claiming that Harry and Meghan departed Jordan on separate aircraft, each heading toward different undisclosed destinations. That single detail quickly fueled another wave of speculation and conversation across media outlets and online forums.
So everyone at the moment is obsessed with what the royals are doing and saying following the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten.
Meghan reportedly returned to California, while Harry was said to have remained somewhere in Europe for a period of time. And that single logistical detail, two people finishing the same trip but heading in completely different directions, quickly became another topic people couldn't stop discussing. For many observers, it seemed symbolic. After all, this visit had been expected to mark a major turning point. The WHO connection, the humanitarian messaging, the carefully produced footage, the entire trip appeared designed to re-establish their presence on the global stage and present them as a strong, united force working together. That was the narrative surrounding the mission going in. But when the trip ended with reports that they traveled to separate destinations, it added another layer to the conversation. Regardless of the official explanation, that final image stuck in the public mind and fueled even more speculation about what was really happening behind the scenes. The financial world also reacted quickly. Commentators and brand analysts in London began discussing the impact of the controversy surrounding the Jordan visit. Some reports suggested that the perceived value of the Sussex brand had taken a major hit following the backlash and online debate. And in the world of reputation and branding, shifts like that are often interpreted as a serious signal.
The hate towards Meghan and Harry is something beyond me, because the way the UK media and tabloids talk about this tour, wow.
A brand that once carried enormous commercial value built on major streaming deals, podcast contracts, and high-profile speaking engagements suddenly found itself facing a very different assessment. By the end of the Jordan trip, some analysts were openly questioning whether the Sussex brand still held the same commercial strength it once did. In several industry discussions, commentators even described it as becoming increasingly difficult to position as a reliable long-term media property. And interestingly, those conversations didn't focus only on the royal snub or the online comparisons people had been debating. According to reports from analysts, the moment that stood out most was the visible sense of division people believed they saw during the trip itself, particularly the detail about the couple departing on separate flights. At the same time, attention also turned toward the WHO partnership that had helped frame the Jordan visit as a humanitarian mission. Sources familiar with international nonprofit collaborations suggested that the partnership was already scheduled for periodic internal review, as most global initiatives are. But after the controversy surrounding the trip, some observers began questioning whether continuing the arrangement beyond its current timeline would remain worthwhile. Meanwhile, inside Jordan, something quieter but just as revealing was reportedly unfolding behind the scenes.
Of the world
Oh, the heck is it? World Central Kitchen. World Central Kitchen. This is the same kitchen.
Jordanian media also made a subtle shift that many observers found revealing. Following the royal court's noticeable silence throughout the visit, several outlets reportedly stopped using the title Royal Highness when referring to Harry and Meghan. Instead, some reports began describing them simply as celebrity visitors. At first glance, that change in wording might seem minor, but in diplomatic and media circles, language carries weight. The way titles are used or not used often signals how institutions choose to position someone publicly. So when local media adjusted their wording while appearing to mirror the royal court's tone, commentators saw it as a quiet but meaningful message about how the visit was being viewed. Then another detail surfaced after the trip ended. According to reports discussed by royal watchers, the Sussex team had requested a joint photograph between Meghan and Queen Rania. The idea was said to focus on global female leadership, two influential women standing together in one powerful image. But the response from the Jordanian side was reportedly short and firm: no. And one comment that circulated afterward summed up the situation bluntly. An aide in Amman was quoted as saying, "The Queen of Jordan doesn't appear in other people's content." That remark quickly became one of the most talked about lines connected to the entire trip.
Not only are there Hamas connections, she is being slammed for the way...
That single line, combined with everything else that unfolded, seemed to capture how many observers believed the Jordanian court viewed the entire situation from beginning to end. So where did all of this leave things? By the close of February 28th, discussions among media commentators and brand analysts had turned sharply critical. Some even suggested the Sussex brand had lost much of the commercial strength it once held. At the same time, the partnership that helped frame the visit, the collaboration connected to the humanitarian messaging, was reportedly facing increased scrutiny. Questions were also being raised about whether the trip had achieved any of the credibility it was supposed to bring. Meanwhile, the country chosen as the stage for this major moment had quietly reshaped the narrative by the way it handled the visit. And the image many people remembered most was the couple leaving Jordan and reportedly heading in completely different directions afterward. Jordan was meant to be the test case, the moment that would prove the Sussex model still worked on the world stage. Instead, critics argued it ended up raising more doubts than answers. So if we step back and look at the bigger picture, the entire mission had been months in the making, a carefully planned trip, a partnership designed to sound credible, and a storyline built to capture global attention.
Tour, it seems, just like Nigeria and Colombia. And it's like, why are these?
A country with a powerful humanitarian story seemed like the perfect stage. The letter was sent, the production crew was assembled, the travel plans were locked in. Everything looked carefully organized for a trip that was supposed to make a strong statement, but by the time the visit ended, with the two of them reportedly heading in completely different directions, very little had unfolded the way it was expected to. The Jordanian royal family never responded to the letter requesting a meeting. The motorcade that had been requested didn't appear, and Queen Rania was publicly attending other engagements throughout the visit rather than participating in any shared moments. The joint photograph that had reportedly been requested never happened either. Even the reception at the British ambassador's residence, which eventually took place, became part of the discussion because commentators said it appeared to come together only after significant effort behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the content filmed during those 2 days, the hospital visit, the football match with refugee children, and the prosthetic leg demonstration, ended up generating headlines for reasons the team likely didn't expect. Instead of focusing purely on humanitarian work, public conversations quickly shifted toward comparisons, criticism, and personal controversies surrounding the trip. For critics watching the situation unfold, it didn't feel like a routine travel setback. They described it as something much bigger, a moment where multiple problems surfaced all at once.
Sorry, but if it was Meghan Markle doing anything near as bad as that, we wouldn't be...
When you line up every detail from this trip, from the formal stationery used for the letter to the reports about the final flight plans, many commentators say it all points to the same underlying question. The Sussex model has long been built around the belief that their name, visibility, and past royal connections could carry influence on their own. The idea was that recognition, titles, and years spent close to the royal institution would still open doors, even without the monarchy formally standing behind them. Jordan became a very direct test of that assumption. And according to critics, the response from that test appeared unmistakably clear. Princess Anne's reported remarks captured what some observers had been saying quietly for years. Her point, as it was interpreted in coverage of the story, was that the performance of compassion and the reality of compassion are not the same thing. In other words, people can recreate the poses, the imagery, and the public moments, but those visuals only carry meaning if the substance behind them is real. And many analysts believe that, diplomatically speaking, the world has become increasingly skilled at recognizing the difference.
And community empowerment. One of their first stops was meeting children from Gaza, who were evacuated to Jordan for urgent medical.
By the end of it all, the image people were left with was striking. Harry and Meghan standing in the desert with a letter that was never answered, waiting for doors that never opened. Meanwhile, the Hashemite royal court made its position clear through silence, distance, and carefully chosen actions. And by the time February 28th was over, the gap between where the Sussex team believed they stood and where the world seemed to place them had never looked more visible. At this point, the big question isn't whether the Sussex model is facing serious challenges. For many observers, that question has already been answered. The real question now is what comes next. Do Harry and Meghan rebuild their strategy? Do they pivot to something completely different? Or does this moment mark a turning point in how their global role evolves? Now, I want to hear from you. If you made it this far, drop your thoughts in the comments and tell me what you think happens next for these two. And if you enjoy deep dives into stories like this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with others, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.